Nemico.
Day 365 of the invasion in Ukraine. First, tonight, Joe Biden has said Putin has made, quote, a big mistake by suspending the last remaining nuclear arms treaty with the United States. Russia's decision to suspend its participation in the New START nuclear arms reduction treaty. Russia's parliament on Wednesday approved Vladimir Putin's move to suspend the treaty.
What's your message to Putin on that?
It's a big mistake to do that. Not very responsible.
In an article here coming from CBS News, Russian test launch of the Satan II missile failed, U.S. says, as Putin suspends role in that nuclear treaty. Meanwhile, the Biden administration vowed the U.S. will, quote, defend literally every inch of NATO. That's the exact quote there. Literally every inch of NATO, they said, ahead of talks with NATO's Secretary General. China's top diplomat, Wang Yi, has met Vladimir Putin in Moscow as China and Russia reaffirmed their close bilateral relationship. Wang told Putin that Beijing will play a, quote, constructive role, as they said, in reaching a political settlement of the crisis in Ukraine. Russia's courting of China comes ahead of an expected visit by President Xi Jinping to Russia this spring. This week's intel report has kind of been a weird blur between Russian news and China news. It seems like the two themes have come together. We've gone from covering China and Taiwan separately and Russia separately to now we're covering both of them because of their relations with each other here. It says here the U.S. has now given several cautionary warnings to China as concerns mount that Beijing will step up support for Russia's war in Ukraine. We haven't seen them give lethal aid to Russia at this time for the war, but they also haven't taken that off the table. The war in Ukraine is dominating global geopolitics this week as the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion fast approaches. Officials in Moscow appeared unrepentant about Russian President Vladimir Putin's announcement on Tuesday that Russia was suspending its participation in the New START nuclear arms control treaty with the U.S., a pact that limits the two sides' strategic nuclear arsenals. In some news about the Chinese spy balloon, the U.S. Air Force released new images of that suspected Chinese spy balloon taken from a U-2 spy plane. I mean, right away, knowing that they had a U-2 spy plane up there, that they were buzzing this thing, paints a different picture here about just how closely they were watching this balloon. This is basically a selfie taken by a U-2 spy plane pilot. That shows, inside the cockpit here, and then of course we could see the Chinese spy balloon in the background here. The war in Ukraine has impressed on Taiwan's leaders the need to acquire and stockpile more weapons. I've talked about this a lot when I discuss China and Taiwan, and the fact that Taiwan really isn't as prepared as a lot of people seem to think. They realize now that they need to be stockpiling weapons, they need to be stockpiling ammunition because it can be used up very quickly, as we've seen in Ukraine. Again, a lesson that's become increasingly urgent in recent months as China's provocations accelerate. Again, this comes from the chairman of the New House Select Committee on China following a stealth trip to Taipei. Quote, almost every Taiwanese official I met with mentioned the Russian invasion of Ukraine as a wake-up call, said Representative Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin. In an interview Monday upon his return from the self-governing democracy. China claims Taipei as its own and has vowed it will be united with the People's Republic one day by force if necessary. In some Ohio train derailment news, EPA says it can fine Norfolk Southern $70,000 a day if it falls short of cleaning up and paying for the Ohio toxic train wreck. The head of the Environmental Protection Agency threatened expensive consequences if Norfolk Southern fails to fully clean up its toxic train wreck and pay for the fallout in East Palestine, Ohio. The EPA's new legally binding order, set to take effect Thursday, will ensure that Norfolk Southern pays for the mess that they've created. For weeks, residents have reported a variety of health problems since the Norfolk Southern train carrying toxic chemicals derailed, spewing black clouds of smoke over the community of about 5,000 people. To help prevent a deadly explosion of vinyl chloride, crews released a toxic chemical into a trench and burned it off. I think that's about it. I think that about sums up everything for this evening. If I missed anything, guys, send me a message. You can always PM me on Discord. You can always send me an email. I love reading your guys' emails. I read every comment. I read every message that's sent my way. Sometimes I get bombarded with them, so it takes me a little bit of time to get back to people, so bear with me. But to everybody that tuned in this evening, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Until next time, you are watching Nemico Network.
Nemico.